Okay, there we are. God bless Queen Victoria and the royal we. Okay, so we'll start with our invocations. All right, connect with your teachers, my friends. Step, just push aside all those samskaras of the day, of the secular, and just push them aside. They're going to be right there when we finish. And let's enter into this world of 16th century of Raj Bhakti theology together. Let's encounter love of God in the Krishna tradition as theologized by Rūpa Gosvāmi in this wonderful text, the ocean of the nectar of the rasa, of the ecstasy of bhakti. Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Akanda Mandalakaram Yena Vyaptam Characharam Tat Padam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandhu, Jagatpate, Gopesha, Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta, Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe, Brindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanu Sute Devi, Pranamami Hare Priya. Apavitra Pavitro Va, Sarva Vastha Gatopi Va, Ya Smaret Pudarikaksham, Sa Bhayabhyantara Shuchi. And I want to also read the 8 verses that were written by Rupa's guru, Sri Chaitanya. What I suspect might happen is that we'll probably finish Bhava Bhakti. And Prema Bhakti is only 2 or 3 pages, just a continuation. It's like, it's like Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. It's not different things. So Bhava and Prema is just more of an intensification of the same thing, just like the last 3 limbs of yoga. They're not distinct things. Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi are not distinct things. Unlike the first 5 limbs, which are distinct. Yamas are different sorts of things from niyamas. And I'm up in your neck of the woods, Mary. Mary's like, when are you going to see me? Mary lives not far from here. And Mary Jane too. Mary Jane, yeah. So Bhava and Prema are Prema is just an intensification, as we'll see. We'll have the definitions. So what may happen is we'll finish let's just see what happens. But I do want to, it's fine if we have an extra session, at least it's fine with me. And then also you haven't had a chance to really ask questions or engage or share or, or comment or respond in any way. So might be nice to have an extra session even just for that. But let's just see how we do and without making too many plans. Right, up with our text. So we remember it's an ocean. It's the Bhakti Rasa Amrita. It's the Sindhu. A Sindhu is an ocean divided into these 4 quadrants for this sort of, because it's an ocean of ecstasy. For the ancient imagination, it was an ocean. I suppose for us, it's deep space. I don't know why they decided to go with the ocean metaphor, right? Even the samsara, the ocean of samsara. So in the Indian imaginaire, when they thought of something that was vast and profound and basically infinite, right? The nearest thing they could think of was the ocean. I don't know why we would have thought of outer space. You might have thought they might have done too, right? But for some reason, the ocean seemed vaster to them. I don't know how that works. But so it's an ocean because it's an ocean of bliss. Rasa. So having established that as his primary metaphor, then he goes along with it, divides the ocean into these 4 quadrants. And then so that, like the 4 padas, if you will, but instead of calling them padas, Vedanta Sutra has 4 padas, Yoga Sutras has 4 padas. So 4 padas is a fairly established. Not all sutras have 4 padas, but I wouldn't say standardized, but fairly common idea. So he's changed it up. Instead of a foot, pada is a foot, or pada, same thing, pada or pada. He's called them quadrants. So now he goes along with a metaphor and has these different waves within each quadrant, within the ocean. So now we're in the third, Bhava Bhakti. Bhava means a million different things. Some words you look up in Monia Williams' Sanskrit dictionary, oh my goodness, and there could be 50 different meanings. Bhava is probably one of the most, can mean creation. It can mean a number of different things. It can mean, samsara. Now, but let's sally forth. So Bhava is a special form of the pure and luminous quality. Okay, it's an experience. I with the highest respect to Sri Rupa, I don't find this the most useful of definitions, but anyway, maybe I'll change my mind. Is a special form of the pure, right? It's pure. Especially we know that bhakti, when we get to the stage of love of God, then it's pure. There's no more give me. There's no me, I, me, my. There's no ahankara. There's no asmita. There's nothing in it for the self at this point. Because Vaidhi Bhakti, there might be something in it for the self. People might do Vaidhi Bhakti because they want something from God, or they might even want moksha. But once you get to the stage of Bhava, although there will be some mild exceptions we'll see at the end of the chapter, but mostly it's pure. So Bhava is a special form of the pure and luminous. So luminous. Shuddha sattva visheshatma prema surya ashu samyak bhak. Okay. And it is like a beam of the sun of supreme love. So the next chapter is Prema. And this is a beam of love. So it's a stage. So if love is the sun, that's the grand finale, complete and utter Prema. Well, Bhava is you're on the way. It's not quite the sun; it's a beam of the sun. Okay, so the Prema, which is the next chapter, very short chapter our last chapter together. This is a beam of that sun. Okay, so like Dharana is a sort of stage that's on its way to Samadhi. There's still some distraction there in Dharana, but basically Dharana, you could say, is a beam of Samadhi. So he's something like that. It's desirous rays. Of course, the desire here at this point, all desire is simply desire for God. Remember, raga. Soften the heart. The heart becomes softened with love and gentle and kind and compassionate and humble and melts and childlike. And so he quotes the Tantra. He doesn't tell us which one. The first stage of supreme love is called Bhava. So it's the first stage of Prema. As I keep repeating, as Dharana is the first stage of the internal process that ends in Nirbija Samadhi. Here, the responses, such as tears and goosebumps, are manifest in small amounts. Okay, so when one starts to experience Bhava, the responses are actually in the next chapter, but I'll just read them to you. They are the Anubhavas. So the responses are things like, and this is the Sattvika Bhava, things like actions like dancing, rolling on the ground. In other words, the mind becomes overwhelmed with beginnings of ecstatic feelings, and that manifests physiologically through the body. And the body then might dance, roll on the ground, singing spontaneously, just joy, pure ecstasy, shrieking. So you start to see, bizarre behavior, if you will, or rather non-conventional behavior, non-conventional from a social point of view, shrieking, twisting the body, roaring, the mouth gaping. So the mental states then, because the body is not designed to cope with these kinds of mental states, the body starts to act in abnormal ways. Actually, later on, he's going to say what happens is the prana, the mind, the state of the mind is carried by the prana throughout the body, but that state, the body isn't designed to deal. I always give the example of an electric current. If you get an appliance from let's say America, and you take it to Europe, the electric grid is different there. So you blow your appliance. The appliance will exhibit physical symptoms like blowing, like fusing. So that's not a bad analogy. So that's what happens to the body. The mind, the emotional states of the mind, the chitta stuff, because the chitta stuff is carried around the body by the prana, even in just conventional yoga physiology. So that's how, consciousness as well is carried around the body through the prana. So then those extraordinary mental states then carried around the body through the prana cause the body to behave in these sorts of ways. Okay, so mouth gaping, sighing, disregarding the opinion of others, salivating, you might not want to do that in the middle of class, laughing loudly, whirling, and hiccuping. So these are the types of responses, meaning the mind responding to the dawning of prema in the form of bhava, the preliminary stage of prema, right? Tears and goosebumps. I'm sure you've all had this experience. If you're sitting in the kirtan, I bet all of you have had this, and it's, and the singer, the chanter is chanting sweetly and purely, not too much ego involved. You'll feel your hair on your end. It's called horripilation. It's not a very, it sounds rather ghastly word, but when the hair on your body tries to stand up because of the ecstasy and you get goosebumps. So that's a bhava. Then you're experiencing bhava if you experience that in a kirtan, goosebumps. These are manifested small amounts because it's bhava, it's not prema yet. Okay? So they are physical external symptoms. Of course, yoga, there's internal symptoms, like Arjuna said. Arjuna asks Krishna, how do you recognize somebody who's an advanced yogi? And Krishna says, free of desire, free of anger. There's all kinds of internal, yogic symptoms, but these are just physiological, because bhakti is an emotional state. So we know that he's going to illustrate this, and he quotes the Padma Purana. While meditating on the two lotus feet of the Lord, King Ambarish was slightly overwhelmed. It's bhava, right? It's not all the way. And his eyes filled with tears. So here's a symptom. Here's an example of a bhava, what he's calling responses. I would call them symptoms. But responses is fine because the body is responding to this unusual mental state. Now, once manifest in the mind, and this, by the way, this is a gift of God. It doesn't come from within the mind. It manifests in the mind. So love of God is a gift from God. I hope this has been clear. Unlike chitta vritti nirodha, which is you do by your own willpower. You nirodha the mind, still it. But bhakti is a gift from Bhagavan. So it permeates the mind. So once manifest in the mind, this love, and he gives another word for it, rati, identifies with the mind's own nature. Even though it is manifesting, it appears to be manifest by the activity of the mind. Okay, let's give an example. We'll go with Jiva Goswami's example. Get an iron bar, and it's made of iron. But now put it into the fire till it becomes red hot. The fire is coming from the outside, but it's permeating the entirety of that iron bar. So the iron bar becomes red hot. It becomes just like fire. And it looks as if that fire is in the iron bar, or it looks as if the fire is emanating from the nature of the iron bar. It's not. It's coming from the outside. So with that metaphor in mind, when that love pervades the mind, it identifies with the mind's own nature, just like the fire identifies with the iron bar, pervades the iron bar. It identifies with the mind's own nature, even though it is self-manifesting. It's not coming from the mind, it's coming from beyond. It's a gift of God. When God becomes Ishvara, Bhagavan becomes attracted by it. That's why we do Vedic Bhakti, my friends. Of course, we purify the mind, pure, but your mind could be 100% pure. That doesn't mean Ishvara is going to manifest there. You can't force Ishvara to do anything. There's the difference between jnana yoga or Patanjali yoga, where you can force it. After all, what is chitta vritti nirodha other than force? What is nirodha, nirud, to force the mind to stop? So it's willpower. Bhakti is not like that. So the bhakti process is purify the mind, purify, but you could have 100% sattvic mind. That doesn't force Bhagavan to manifest. So therefore, that's why surrender is absolutely central to this. no ego, like the cat, the kitten, and the monkey. You surrender helplessly, and therefore your Vedic Bhakti, it's just your little offering to Krishna, to Bhagavan, saying, look, this is what, from my side, this is all I can do. All I can do is follow this Vaidhi as best as I can. But other than that, I just have to wait for your grace to manifest in the mind. So that's the mode of Bhakti. Surrender and humility, that's what it means. What does it mean? Humility, I can't do a damn thing. I can't do anything other than, try, follow the process that's been laid down by the great bhaktas that went before, like Rūpa. We follow in the footsteps. We don't make stuff up. That's a sign of humility. Who do we think we are to make stuff up? That's arrogance. Oh, that's a kind of a post-enlightenment, type of way of thinking. Not a bhakti way of thinking. So therefore we follow very closely. We hug the footsteps of the previous great beings out of humility and just honesty with our own inability to do anything, to understand anything. So we hope to attract this love, which when it merges in the mind and it takes over the mind, and then we start getting these responses. In reality, this love is enjoyment itself. It's pleasure. It's pure pleasure, ananda, but bliss. But it also becomes the cause of enjoyment of the actions of Krishna and his intimate companions. This is not a very easy verse too. I sort of puzzle a little bit over this, but it is experience unto itself, but it also prompts us to act in the sense of seeking God more intensely. So when the mind becomes imbued with love, that love is a thing unto itself. It manifests in the mind. So it is enjoyment itself, but that very love prompts us, is the cause of the enjoyment of the actions of Krishna and his intimate companions. It causes the bhakta to absorb the mind in the Leela of Krishna with his wonderful Vrindavan Vraj devotees. Remember, what is a Raganuga? Follows the Ragatmika. Remember the definition of Raganuga? The Raganuga follows, shall we do want to check back on that? The Raganuga follows the I think it's worthy just to quickly glance back for a minute at the Raganuga. What is the definition? It follows in the footsteps of the Ragatmikas. Who are the Ragatmikas? The characters in the 10th book. Let's just quickly. Now Raganuga. Devotion is called Raganuga, right? When it imitates the Ragatmika Bhakti that shines forth clearly in the residents of Vraj. Who are the residents of Vraj? They are the devotees of Krishna in the 10th book of the Bhagavata Purana. The gopis, the gopas, Yashoda, Nanda, they are eternal Ragatmikas. They are eternal, companions of God. So Raganuga is when you imitate it. How is it different from Vedi? How is it different from Vedi? Because you're not doing it. You're not doing it. Out of Vedi rules and regulations. You may accept some of those practices, but you're doing it spontaneously. Vedi Bhakti, it's not spontaneous. You're very much, humbly and sincerely. You don't have that raga. You don't have that intense attachment yet. You want it. You desire it, but you don't have it. So you follow the rules and regulations. But Ragatmika then, Raganuga is your following. He calls it imitating. I would call it molding yourself. You're trying to mold your mind into the mindset of the Ragatmikas. They are the participants in Krishna's Leela as revealed in the 10th book. The 10th book of the Bhagavata Purana is considered to be a revelation of the kingdom of God in the Krishna tradition. The nature of God, remember, the nature of God's abode can only be revealed. Logic can never deduce its nature. So Raganuga, it molds itself on these great devotees of Vraj. Okay, with all that said, then let's go back to our to where we left off. And here we are. So in reality, this love, this bhava that manifests, it's enjoyment itself, but it also becomes the cause of the enjoyment of the actions of Krishna and his intimate companions. They are the ragatmikas, the eternal beloved companions and associates of God. We wish to become like them. We want some of that. So in the beginning, it's Vaidhi. Eventually, we hope Raganuga will manifest. And that Raganuga itself then is an experience unto itself, and it triggers action. It triggers further interest in absorbing the mind even further in the actions of Krishna. Now, this bhav is born in two ways. Either from sadhana, practice. So it can come out of Vaidhi Bhakti. That's the point of Vaidhi Bhakti. We don't, one may enjoy Vaidhi Bhakti, but actually when you start to enjoy Vaidhi Bhakti, then that's the beginning of bhav right there. When you're actually enjoying the practices, you're actually getting joy, then that joy itself is a bhav. So it can come out of practice. But sometimes we do Vaidhi Bhakti, we don't really feel like it. I mean, there's plenty of times I get up in the morning to do my japa, and my mind is protesting and resisting. So at that point, it becomes sadhana. Remember Patanjali? Nerantarya, remember? Abhyasa is dirghakala, nerantarya. It's a yatna. First of all, it's a yatna. Tatra abhyasa is it's a yatna. Tatra stito or something. It's the effort to keep the mind fixed. It's a yatna. Verse 13 and 14. Dirghakala nerantarya satkara sevita dridha bhumihi, and you do it for a long time without interruption. So that's what sadhana is. It's not always joyful, and the mind doesn't always want to do it. You have to. That's what tapas is. That's what in the beginning you have to beat the mind. You have to control the mind because the mind is so used to whimsically and frivolously just roaming around, fantasizing about desires. So sadhana, which is Vaidhi Bhakti. Vaidhi Bhakti is just a bhakti term for sadhana. It's the same thing. I hope that's clear. The sadhana here has 64 possible ingredients. You can remember, take any one or a number of them. So this bhava is born either from diligent, right? It might be diligent dedication in the beginning, rather than spontaneous, ecstatic embracing. So it's either comes from diligent dedication to sadhana, or for the very fortunate by the grace of Krishna's devotees. Sometimes we're blessed. Even Patanjali says, Ishvara can give you samadhi. Samadhi is slightly, we're talking about a different thing, but this idea of grace, and it pervades the sort of the Gita, especially in the chapter 18, by my grace, by my grace, by my grace, mat prasadat, mat prasadat, mat prasadat. The first, however, is more common. For all of us, it's going to be sadhana, my friends. The second is very rare. To get the grace of Krishna's devotees, so we shouldn't sort of count on that. No, we should be counting on, from our side, devoting ourselves as sincerely as we can to the sadhana. That's what it means to be a bhakta in the preliminary, in the Vaidhi Bhakti stage. And don't stick your nose up at Vaidhi Bhakti. Immediately the ego is like, oh, I'm not a Vaidhi Bhakti, I'm a Raganuga. That's just ego talking. Come on, we played enough tricks with it. Our minds has tricked us enough in samsara. Let's not have it trick us again when we take up these practices. We are eligible for Vaidhi Bhakti, and that may take many lives, as Krishna says in the Gita. Trust me, I've been at it 45 years. When I started, I thought I'd have Prema in 5 years, be rolling in the ground, laughing and crying. 45 now, after 45 years, I when Krishna says in the Gita, in the chapter 6, it may take many lives. I take that seriously. That's starting to look like inevitable at this point. So it's more common then. The second is very rare, this grace, but grace is always possible because Bhagavan is free. Can't say there's no chance of grace, because then that would be limiting Bhagavan. Bhagavan can do anything he wants. So Bhagavan can bestow. But even then, how's he going to bestow? He's not whimsical. Bhagavan is not by nature whimsical. He's attracted by our sincerity and by our struggles to follow the path. So, bhava, born from diligent dedication to practices, right? So this is the first type, right? So bhava is either born from dedication. The practice is sadhana or grace, prasada. So remember these two terms, sadhana, prasada means grace. Two ways, right? He's going to, you know how this works. He's going to unpack the first, then he goes back and unpacks the second. But now you're familiar with commentarial methodology. You get a little list, but even Patanjali does it, right? What is Nirodha? Abhyasa Vairagya. So, okay, then he unpacks Abhyasa is 13, 14, and Vairagya 15, 16. So that's just systematic exposition, right? 5 vrittis, what are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 kleshas, what are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, discussion. So he's doing the same thing. 2 types, let's look at them one by one. So Bhava born from this sadhana is of 2 types. And depending on whether it's Vaidhi Bhakti or Raganuga. So Bhava can come from Vaidhi, or it can come from Raganuga. It can come from following, or it can come from spontaneously. But remember, anyone that's getting it spontaneously has done Vaidhi in a past life. There is no magic. If someone actually does have Raganuga Bhakti, it comes from, except here, very exceptional, occasionally it's grace, but otherwise it's vasana, it's impressions from past life. There's no magic. Right. Diligent dedication to spiritual practices brings about desire for Hari. So if we do this Vaidhi Bhakti, then we develop a desire for Hari. We start to sort of, and of course, how do we know that? Then other desires start to ebb away. That's also, of course, the test of if we are actually developing a genuine desire for Hari, that desire eclipses others, evaporates others. Then it produces attachment. We want attachment for God. That's what we want. We don't want attachment for other things, obviously. That's basic yoga. But it produces asakti, attachment, and then causes the birth of love for him. All right, so there's stages: spiritual practice, desire, attachment, love. By the way, this actually parallels the Gita. When the Gita talking about how do we get trapped by desires, it says you start off by contemplating the objects of the senses, like a bar of chocolate. Then you develop attachment. That then strengthens into desire. So that same kind of psychological sequencing we find and that's why Patanjali says klishta and aklishta vrittis. The same psychological sequencing. So here, that sequencing of practices, and then desire, then attachment, that we want to direct that to Bhagavan, because we want Bhagavan as our grand finale, as the goal of bhakti yoga. So now he gives his illustrations. We know how this works. He gives an illustration of the birth of Bhava from Vaidhi. Again, the Bhagavad Purana, first book. And here's the verse. Day by day, by the grace of the singers, I heard, this is Narada speaking, the great sage. He was just the son of a maidservant, and there was some sages came that wander around. Now sages have to wander around. They're not supposed to stay in the same place for more than 3 days. So they don't get any attachments to anything, except in the 4 months of the rainy season. Then they can stay in an ashram. So they were staying in the ashram, and his mother was serving the sages, and he was just a young boy, but he heard their conversations, their singing there, and the seed of bhakti was implanted from them. So that's a kind of Vaidhi. Even though he was a kid, he didn't know he was doing Vaidhi, but he was doing, one of the 64 processes is hearing the teachings or the chants, the kirtans. He was hearing it. So day by day, by the grace of the singers, I heard the mind-stealing stories of Krishna. He heard the mind-stealing. They capture the mind. They're enchanting. Krishna's leelas are enchanting, my friends. Be careful. It can steal your heart and your mind. Listening to every word with faith, O Vyas. Narada is telling his disciple Vyas about how he, Narada, became a bhakta. But he was young and very sincere. He listened to every word with faith. I developed rati, love for the Lord whose glory is dear. So he's attained the state of love from one of the processes of Vaidhi Bhakti, namely, out of the 64, hearing the stories. So in the previous verse, the word love means only bhav, not supreme love. So don't worry, Rūpa is just saying this love here doesn't mean prema, which will be indicated in the next verse with the words Devotion was produced in me. Don't worry about this. I don't know what he just feels. He just sort of interjects that. Right. Here's another illustration. In this way, I listened attentively to every word. This must be the next verse. Yeah, 1:526, 1:528. I listened attentively to every word of the pure praises of Hari that were being sung by the great-souled sages through the rainy season of autumn, right? Rainy season, they were there for 4 months. So what do? They just sit there and do their practices, and their bhaktas, so their practices involve discussing the stories of the Bhagavatam, the 10th book, recounting them, chanting about them. That's what bhakti yoga is. Discussing the leelas, analyzing the leelas, and maybe our next workshop should be precisely on the Bhagavata stories, right? Because Narada became a bhakta just by listening attentively to every word. So, and as a result, devotion that removes all negative qualities, and that, bhakti is like any other, like Kriya Yoga, right? Klesha Tanu Karana weakens the kleshas. Ashtanga, what does it do? Ashuddhikshaye, it destroys impurities. So bhakti has the same effect as any other yogic practice does, but it doesn't stop there. It doesn't want to just purify the mind. Bhakti is about then imbuing the mind by attracting Krishna, Bhagavan, imbuing the mind with love. Bhaktas, remember, don't want to still the mind. They're not interested in the bliss of the Atman. We've had so many verses, rejection of moksha. They want love. So as a result, devotion that removes all negative qualities from the soul was produced in me. I wouldn't say the soul here, but say the mind. From this, hearing the stories. Moving to the third canto, Bhagavatam, Kapila, the queen, his mother, Devahuti, became a great yogini. You might like to read the story of Devahuti. Beautiful story. This is the Bhagavatam Sankhya Yoga teachings are found in this third book. The teachings of Sankhya and of yoga, like Patanjali Yoga and Kapila Ashtanga, is in the third book of the Bhagavatam. So Kapila says, from association with saints, the sadhus, the bhaktas, stories are heard that are pleasing to the ear and the heart and give knowledge of my power. This is what we do as bhaktas. We talk about God. This is what God consciousness means, what Krishna consciousness means, talking about God all the time. Why? Because God's on your mind all the time. Just like young mothers talk about their babies all the time. What does a young mother do? Completely absorbed in the young child, and they go to the park and they chat with the other young mothers. What do they chat about? Their babies, what they've been up to. He's coughing, he's crawling about, he's doing this, he's doing that. Just like that. Mind is absorbed and hearing of stories and stories. So from association with saints, stories are heard that are pleasing to the ear and heart and give knowledge of my power. We learn about the wonderful deeds of Sri Krishna. Receiving pleasure from these stories, one will easily experience faith, develop a faith. This is kind of trans-rational. That doesn't mean we abandon reason, but it's trans-rational, not irrational. Notice the difference. Irrational means it goes against reason. Trans-rational means it's beyond the access of reason. And reason can get you to the place of rationality, as the Vedanta tells us. Reason itself can make it clear to you that its own limitations. So you go beyond it. And where do you go beyond it then? You open yourself up to revelation. That reason can tell you there's an Ishvara, but nothing about the nature of that Ishvara. It can tell you there's there must be some kind of intelligence behind creation. You can get that far with reason, deduction, inferential thinking, and logic. It can tell you there's intelligence, but nothing about the nature. So then what do you do then? Well, if there's intelligence, then there's every chance to suppose that intelligence can reveal itself, and that's revelation. And in this tradition, that revelation takes its most condensed form in the 10th book of the Bhagavata Purana, the first 30 chapters, the Vrindavan Leela, the Krishna's loving exchanges with his bhaktas in the sacred land of Vraj. That's a revelation of the kingdom of God, my friends. Just like the Old Testament, you have Ezekiel and the chariot and the throne, and you have different revelations. So what's the equivalent of that in this? The first third of the 10th book of the Bhagavata Purana. So So receiving pleasure from the stories, they're pleasurable. Everybody likes Krishna Lila. It's so much fun. It's rare to meet someone who doesn't. Sometimes scholars are not happy about the Gopi Lila and they apply feminist lenses to it, and that's fair enough. But little Krishna stealing butter, I've never met anybody who's not a little bit charmed by that. You know, the hardcore, rational, materialist, cynic, skeptic, gnarly old academic, deconstruct everything. Even someone like that, you'll see a little smile when you read the story of Krishna stealing butter. But believe me, I got plenty of gnarly academics where I work. All right, so receiving pleasure from these stories, one will easily experience faith, love, and then devotion. On the path, right? We're not in Prema yet. That's next chapter, of ultimate beatitude. What is the word for beatitude? Let's have a quick look at the Sanskrit. Just curious now. Shraddha ratir bhaktir anukrama iti taj yosanad dasha. All right, we'll look at it later. In the Puranas and in the Natya Shastra, now he's just giving he's so learned. He's saying, and by the way, in this genre of text, we know the Bhagavata Purana, but there's actually 18 of them. So when he says in the Puranas, then he's talking about the other ones. Otherwise, he would call it the Bhagavata. And in the Natya Shastra is the dance tradition of ancient India, a very sophisticated, theorized tradition of dance. And that's called Natya Shastra. So that informs, facial expressions, how to transmit how to manifest emotional states through your gestures and your faces in a way that will kindle that same emotional state in the mind in the audience, like any good movie. So that's the Natya Shastra, another whole intellectual tradition. So in the Puranas and Natya Shastra, love and Bhāva are equated. So these two terms are defined as synonyms. So this word rati. See, in English we only have one word, love. In Sanskrit, there's so many, and especially in the states of love of God, because it's so nuanced and it's so. And therefore, it looks. We have a problem in English. How do you translate it? We've only got one word, love. I would take rati. If I had to translate it, I would take it more as strong affection, actually, right? And I would keep love for prema. Otherwise, they're going to get conflated because he's used love for rati, and then later on he uses it for prema. So you have to make an effort of distinguishing it. So I would either say preliminary love, or I would say intense affection, something like that, to make a distinction. Anyway, they're equated. Right. An illustration of the birth of Bhāva from Rag. Now, okay, so that's Vaidhi Bhakti. Remember, you get a Bhāva. We started off saying you get a Bhāva from Vaidhi or Raganuga. So that's from Vaidhi. How about from Raganuga? Padma Purana. Following her heart's desire in this way, the young woman who was eager to dance passed the entire night dancing with love for Hari. No Vaidhi Bhakti, spontaneous. I don't know where the story comes from. I don't think he gives it in the footnote, but it's but this young woman just spontaneously dances, and she's not following any Vaidhi. So she's experiencing Raganuga Bhakti. To dance all night in front of a deity is a sign of Raganuga. Now, okay, so Bhāva can come that way from sadhana, whether it's Vaidhi sadhana or Raganuga sadhana, but he also said it can also come from the grace of Krishna or his devotees. You can get Bhāva that way too. Remember, he says it's very rare. Most of us get it from sadhana, but it's possible. So now he's got to discuss this. A Bhāva born from the grace of Krishna. Remember, Bhāva is this beginning state of love of God that permeates the body. And so far, all we know about it is it's an intense experience, and it manifests externally through singing and sighing and goosebumps and roaring and those kinds of symptoms. And it permeates the mind. And it causes bhaktas to lose interest in moksha, and including bhaktas who've experienced mokshas. We're not talking about just theoretically, but yogis who've experienced Svarupa Vastanam, who have experienced that this is really important. The Bhagavatam, many of its role models experience the bliss of the Atman, And then they experienced this. And once they'd experienced this, Bhava and Prema, they never wanted to go back to the Sarupa Vastanam experience, even though it was available for them anytime they wanted it. They wanted this was far more blissful for them. Rupa says, remember at the beginning somewhere, he said, it's like the water in the ocean compared to the water in a footprint of a calf, not even a cow, a calf. That's the bliss of God, because God is the source of all bliss. Is a source of all bliss. So any bliss in our little sparks, the unksha, it's going to be like the heat in a ray of sun. There may be heat and light in a ray of sun, but it's eclipsed by the sun itself. So now an example of Bhava born from the grace of Krishna. Grace of Hari is 3 types. So it can come as a vision, you can see God. Verbal, visual, and of the heart. Let's see where this goes. Okay, this is grace of God now. You can get that Bhava. So three ways that you can get Bhava directly from God. So first, verbal grace. And he quotes this, Naradiya. Krishna says to Narad, oh, best of the twice born. Twice born means he's a Brahmin. So you have your birth from the mother and then birth into the Brahminical order. So you're twice born. It's not born again Christian, although it has some parallel, I suppose. But this is a caste designation. Or best of the twice born, may unwavering devotion for me, a devotion that consists of complete bliss. We're all seeking bliss, and after all, we start off, we're trying to, any spiritual path starts off because we're suffering. Patanjali. Vivekana sarvam dukkam. Then you need, well, what's the cause then? Right? What's the cause of this suffering? It's the cause of suffering then is the coming together, drashtra drishya yaho samyoga. That's Patanjali. But everybody agrees it starts with suffering. Bhakti then takes that suffering and then seeks yoga, but understands that it's not suffering isn't just that I'm an Atman, I'm the seer trapped in a body, but goes beyond that and says, but how come? Who's controlling this? Who's controlling Maya, by which I am trapped? What is this Maya? How is it that I'm trapped by this force, Maya, and embodied? And then seeks revelation, seeks sort of an answer to that question. And then of course in Gita and other texts, Krishna says, Devi hiya shaguna mai mama Maya Duratyaya. This is my Maya, which is very hard to overcome, right? So the bhaktas go a step beyond the jñānis, or those seeking the Atman, to Bhagavan. Okay, so anyway, so how about grace born from a vision? Seeing Krishna, whom they'd never seen before, the people of the jungle, not even part of Vedic culture. These are jungle. See, bhakti's got nothing to do with caste. Krishna gives them his grace. Actually, the very fact that he's born in Vraj, it's actually it's in the jungle, it's in the forest. Krishna is kind of a lowly birth, lowly cowherding community in the forest, the forest dwellers. So, seeing Krishna, whom they'd never seen before, the people of the jungle experienced a softening of the heart and were unable to draw their eyes away from him. They had no idea who he was. They knew nothing about Vedic culture, never did any, maybe in a past life, obviously to see Krishna, they must have done a lot in a past life, but the point is, they're getting grace born from a vision, right? 3 types of grace you get from Krishna, either verbal grace. In the first one, he bestows a boon on Narada, right? May unwavering devotion for you. May you have that. Second, from a vision. And the third way is of the heart. Grace that is experienced internally is called of the heart. It doesn't come from words from the outside or a vision from the outside. It comes in the heart. And then Rupa gives the example of the Shuka Samhita. Remember the naked boy who speaks the whole Bhagavatam to Parikshit, the young sage Shuka. Parikshit's fasting to death. I think we went over that story. So your son was born a great devotee, O Bhadarayana. Without any spiritual practices, he achieved the goal that is Vishnu Bhakti. He was in the womb and he had no reason to come out. He was, already, and then he was attracted. I forget how the story goes, actually. Give me a second. Anyway, well, I guess the point here is that, let's have a look at that footnote. Sorry, I did look this up and I can't remember. Oh, he received a devotion while in his mother's womb, but I'm trying to remember how that happened. Anyway, so he received it internally. I can't remember the story, my friends. I'm sorry. I'll look it up and we'll share it next week. But the point is what? Internally, he was in the womb, and then devotion just blossomed in his mind. I'm just trying to remember what the details of how that, what triggered that. But the reason it's here now is that he experienced it internally, not through visually, not through verbally. Without any spiritual practices, he achieved the goal that is called Vishnu Bhakti. So he's using that as an illustration, but I need to do a better job, sharing the story with you. Moving on. An illustration of a bhava born from the grace of Krishna's devotees, right? Now, another way you can get bhava, right? Your own practices. Remember, there was your own practices, there was grace of Krishna, and there was grace of Krishna's devotees. So you can get that bhava from Krishna's devotees. That's why we serve our gurus. Those of us who have bhakti guru, great gurus, we serve them, and we are pinning our hopes on the grace of our gurus. But just be careful about this whole guru thing. 7th canto of the Bhagavatam. Enough about his innumerable qualities. Prahlad's greatness can only be hinted at by these, for he had an innate love for Lord Vasudeva. So he received it from his guru Narad. The auspicious predilection, the vasana, right, the imprint, auspicious, the vasana of devotion in Prahlad, right? It's an imprint in the mind. Where does it come from? Where does that bhakti come from? It's got to come from it comes into the mind from somehow or other, it comes into the mind, which was caused by the grace of Narad, is innate. Actually, here's the story where Narad was recounting the Bhagavata to his mother when the mother was pregnant. I remember this story. His mother was pregnant with Prahlad in the womb, and the great Vyas recited, she was taking shelter from the demons in the hermitage of Vyas. Vyas recited the Bhagavatam to the pious lady. Prahlad was in the womb. He heard it, and he was born, came out a pure devotee. But why? Because the grace of Narad. What grace was that? Narada explaining the Bhagavatam to his mother. So you could say it was verbal, actually, but it was the grace of Prahlad. So these are some of the ways we get bhakti. Mostly it's the grace of the bhaktas. We receive it from our teachers, my friends. We receive it from those who have some bhakti, that have some taste, and they share it with us. That's their main goal in life, is to do that. What they got from their teachers, they share with others. Skanda Purana. You are blessed, here's Narad again. You are blessed, O divine sage Narad, for by means of your grace, even this lowly hunter, his hair standing on end, instantaneously attained a love for a tutor. I'm not sure what this story is, but I do know one of Narada's disciples was a hunter who became the great Valmiki in the next birth and was the author of the Ramayana. I'm not sure if it's the same hunter, but why not? He mentions a tutor here, but it's Rama. There was a hunter, and he was a cruel hunter. He actually took pleasure in half killing animals and watching them writhe. That's very cruel. That kind of a tamasic mindset. So Narada came down, and somehow or other the hunter had some samskara tucked away in his mind from, who knows, maybe a past life, that he was able to at least honor the sage, or at least recognize, probably didn't know who he was, but somehow or other get up and offer some kind of respect, some kind of namaha to the great Narada as he came down. And then Narada then gave him a vision of his next life. This is one of the few examples I can think of actually prophecy. Prophecy is huge in the Old Testament. The prophets would reveal the future. You don't get any of that in the Indian tradition. You might get, what you get in the Indian tradition is past life revelation. Of course, in the Abrahamic traditions, they don't believe in past lives. So it's the other way around. Abrahamic traditions, nothing about past lives, but you do get prophets. That's what it means to be a prophet, right? You prophesize, right? Like to the Pharaoh, whatever it is, about the dreams and the locusts and so forth. Like, what was his name? The coat of many color. What was his name?
Jacob.
Jacob, right? So so it's the other way around in the Vedic traditions. You get nothing about prophecy, but you do get people, revealing their past life to somebody. But there's an exception to that, and that's this story that Narada revealed to the hunter all of the animals that the hunter had killed and tortured were waiting for him to die, so they could get their karmic revenge. And they were waiting there with their sharpened teeth and claws and horns, and waiting so that they could gore him and just repay him his karma. So he had this vision, and it freaks him out. And he had the ability somehow or other. He had enough piety from somewhere, despite that present situation he was in, that awful tamasic, cruel situation he was in. He must have had some other periods of life where maybe he had some past life. He had some piety. He was able to throw himself at the feet of the sage and say, please help me, tell me what to do. So Narada said, just take the name of Ram. But he was so simple, he couldn't say Ram, he couldn't say it. So Narada said, okay, then say Mara, the name of a woman. You can do that. So he goes, just repeat it, and you'll purify your mind. So the hunter, then he left him, he gave him the mantra. That's what the guru does. And then the hunter went Mara, 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 and obviously tricked him to say, not tricked him, but gave him a method of saying Rama, because Mara, right, becomes Rama if you say it. And in this way, he became a great bhakta of Rama. So this could be the story here. By means of your grace, Narada, even this lowly hunter, his hair standing on end, instantaneously attained the love of Achyuta. So even if it's not the same story, it's still a lovely story. Love is considered to be of 5 types, corresponding to the different types of devotees. That's going to be a later chapter of the, love is as a beloved, like the gopis, love of the God as a child, like Yashoda, love of God as a friend, like the gopas, love of God as a servant, like Hanuman, and love of God from a neutral kind of witnessing, just the love of God, but without an active relationship, just beholding the wondrous form and majesty of God. That's Aishwarya Bhav. That's a Shantaras. But he says, so it has 5 types. They're all love, corresponding to these different 5 types of devotees. And since it will be analyzed and discussed later in the 5th wave of the southern quadrant, we're in the eastern quadrant, and also in the entire western quadrant, he said, I'm not going to explain it in detail here. So if we were to go on reading the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu, we would look at those 5 types of love. Now, let's jump down here. These are these anubhavas that appear in a person in whom a sprout of bhava has been born. So if you have a sprout of bhava, not full-fledged, complete, overwhelmed, complete and utter overwhelmedness in bhava, but just a little sprout. What are the anubhavas? He calls them indications. Remember, before there were responses, the body responding to the ecstasy of love. Here are indications, anubhavas. What are they? Patience, fruitful use of time. He's going to define them one by one, okay? So just let's read the list. We know how this works as lists, and then each one is unpacked. Disinterest, lack of pride, hopefulness, longing, a desire for always singing the Lord's name, attachment in proclaiming his qualities, delight in places which he dwells. These are some examples of the anubhavas, the indications that appear in a person in whom a sprout of bhava has been born, just a sprout. Okay, let's move on and look at them one by one. And we know how the first one, patience. Patience is the state of remaining unagitated, even when confronting the very source of agitation. So, example, Pariksha says, may you Brahmanas and the goddess Ganga accept me as one who has approached you for shelter with a mind fixed on the Lord. Remember, the Parikshit's fasting to death, got 7 days. And that's why this whole Bhagavatam is recounted to him by the naked young Shuka that we just encountered. So he's going to get bitten by a snake, a curse that a young Brahmin boy cursed him to die in 7 days by snake bite. So he goes, let the cunning snake sent by the Brahmana bite me. You all please sing songs of Vishnu. So he's patient in he's going to be listening to the Bhagavatam for 7 days. So he's engaging in one of the 64 practices, hearing. He's doing it with patience, 7 days. So the second one, an illustration of the fruitful use of time. And he quotes this text, Hari Bhakti Sudhodhaya. The devotees of Hari are not satisfied, even when incessantly praising him with words, remembering him with the mind, bowing to him with the body, tears flowing from their eyes. They offer their entire lives to Hari alone. But still, in one sense, because bhakti is so utterly, overwhelmingly blissful, there's a type of transient, it's impossible for us to understand this. Because when we think of dissatisfaction, it's a negative thing. But this kind of not being satisfied is because God is so amazing, and God's qualities are infinitely expanding. God is not static. His qualities are not static. So God's increasing infinitely. Love is increasing infinitely. And they call it dissatisfaction. I'm not sure it's a helpful term. It doesn't matter. But what's the point? The point is the fruitful use of time. They're spending all of their times praising, remembering, bowing to him. And it's like you're never satiated. Because if you think about it, if you're satiated with something, you stop doing that thing. Right? If I'm hungry and then I eat, well, then I stop. I'm satiated. But that's not that. I think that's the idea here, not satisfied. It's an eternally ongoing thing, and it's ever increasing, ever increasing, ever increasing. Why? Because God's not static. God's qualities are not static. So it's not like you reach a state and that's it. You kind of just linger there for all eternity. No, it's ever growing, ever growing, ever growing, infinite. Unlike the experience of the Atman, Rūpa Gosvāmī experience is static, because by definition it's unchanging. By definition, it doesn't change. So if you realize Brahman or you realize the Atman, same thing, actually. It's a static experience. It maybe it's Satchit Ananda. No one's denigrating it. Well, of course, the bhaktas do in a way, but it's static, not the love of God. It's ever increasing, ever increasing, ever increasing. Right. So that's this little list. Now we're on number 3. What is disinterest? Vairagya. Spontaneous loss of appetite for the objects of the senses. This is another indicator of bhava. We want to think, oh, I've got bhava, oh, I have love of God. Well, it's easy to say that, my friends. But what's the test then? Disinterest, same as any yogic test. Disinterest in the loss of appetite for the objects of the senses. That's how you test your yogic progress. We test it by how detached, how much vairagya, drishta anushravika, vishaya, vitrishnasya, vashikara samnya, vairagya. Even Patanjali defines it more or less along the same lines. Loss of appetite for the objects of the senses. Read the end of chapter 2. When Arjuna asks Krishna, who is the one with the sage of fixed mind? Every verse has something to do with loss of desire. That's how we tell. You want to get a sense of how you're doing in your yogic journey, my friends. If you want to check in, how am I doing? What progress am I making or not making? Very, very one little litmus test. How free are we becoming from desires for mundane things and attachments? That's it. And just between you and your mind. Don't start talking to other people, because then your ego gets in the way. You say, oh, I'm such a great yogi. Just talk to yourself at night. Be honestly. When you wake up at 3 a.m. How free am I becoming from desires? That's the test. And same here. Disinterest, spontaneous loss, right? Because the mind's now been taken over by something better, is one way of putting it. Love of God. Illustration, 5th canto. As a young man, Bharata longed for the Lord, who is praised as the highest, and abandoned as though they were filth. This is strong language. He abandoned his wife, sons, friends, and kingdom, all of which delight the heart and difficult to renounce them normally. Difficult to renounce your wife, your children, your friends, and he did it as though they were filth. That's a bit strong, but that's what it says in the 5th canto. Next item, lack of pride. To have no pride, even when one is truly eminent. My God, my friends, why are we so trapped with our ego? It's awful. It's like a ghost. Don't you feel it all the time? It's ghost. It's ego. You want people to adore you. You want people to like you, and it's very insidious if you're a teacher, because you want what are you doing? Actually, we're not teachers, we're all students. But some, because the texts are powerful, and then you share them, it's very easy to misidentify yourself with the teaching. The teachings have got nothing to do with you. They come from beyond. And then but the ego kicks in and says, oh, look at me, I'm such a great, it's very insidious. It's like I think of it as a ghost that haunts you. Asmita. So not so easy to shake away, even when you see it, even when you're aware of it. It's that's why we have to have practices. How else are we going to get rid of it? So what does this say here? To have no pride, even when one is truly eminent, is called lack of pride. Let's look at the illustration. Bhagirath. I forget. His story is not in the Bhagavatam, some other Purana. The crushed jewel of kings, who possesses love for Hari, reveres even low-caste dog-eaters while wandering about begging in the towns of his enemies. So he gives up the kingdom, just like Bharata did in the previous one, becomes a renunciate, and now he goes about begging. One thing a warrior should never, ever, ever do is beg. Never. That goes against the dharma of a warrior. Die, but don't beg. Cannot beg. The Brahmins can beg, but not the warrior caste. But he did. He became a sadhu, and then he goes even in the town of his enemies, so they could scorn him and mock him and say, "Oh, look at the great Bhagirath. He's begging. Yeah, have a chapati, mate. Yeah, I'll give you a chapati." So, but because he possesses love for Hari, that's all meaningless now. And he reveres even low-caste dog eaters, right? People that eat dogs. I mean, we might think that's a bit of a we might think that's a bit of a snobby thing to say, but how would you feel if somebody moved in next doors and started cooking dogs? I bet you'd say, yeah, I bet you all of a sudden you'd start getting all snooty about it. So he revered even the dog eaters. Hopefulness, next item on that list that we read, about 12 of them, is the firm assumption that one will obtain the Lord. This is hard. For me, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I get hopeless. When I think I've been doing this for 45 years, and I'm definitely not in the place that I thought I would be at when I started up as a young buck brahmachari. but we have to be hopeful. Hopeful, the firm assumption. This is faith, really. Illustration. Oh, what shall I do? I have no supreme love for you, nor do I engage in any practices of devotion, such as listening to your stories or praising you, nor do I perform Vaishnava yoga. I have no knowledge. I have not performed any auspicious actions. I have no high caste. Even so, despite all this total and utter lack of qualification, oh, beloved of the gopis, Gopinath, since you are the one who satisfies the needs of the insignificant, my steadfast hope for attaining you is causing me great anguish. He has hope. This is what Dina Dayala means. Dina Dayal, Prabhu, Dina Dayal, right? That is Dayala, kind to the Dina, the fallen. So it doesn't mean we should just be fallen, but I mean, even whatever our state is, we can have hope. Hope is one of the signs of Bhāva. Remember, we're talking about the indicators of Bhāva, about longing. Intense hunger to attain one's beloved. And Krishna Karunamrita is the text used for illustration. Intense hunger, that is what Raganuga is. That's longing. We want to long for God. That's inherent in bhakti. My eyes long for the form of the youth of Braj, who enchants the world. His dark eyebrows are slightly curved. His long eyelashes are thick. His impassioned eyes are trembling. See, this is very sensual. Krishna is beautiful. He's gorgeous. His charming speech is gentle. The nectar of his lips is slightly red. The clear sound of his flute is intoxicating. So this is given as an example of longing. Lolupsa, something like that in Sanskrit, longing for God. Next one, an illustration of the desire for always singing the Lord's name. Oh, Govinda, today the young woman with the sweet voice and lotus eyes that are flowing with honey like tears is singing a continuous string of your names. Another symptom of Bhāva, constantly singing about the beloved, because the beloved has absorbed the mind, and that's emanating in the form of song. Next one on that list. Remember, we're looking at this list. Let's just keep our eye on the ball. Let's just go back a minute. It's always good to check back in what we're doing, right? It's like you do in yoga. You go back to the basics all the time, right? Now, here, the indications, anubhavas. We're talking about these indications that appear in a person in whom a sprout, not a full-blown thing, a sprout, a seed of bhakti has been born, right? Indications, 12, patience, fruitful use of time, disinterest, lack of pride, hopefulness, longing, which is what we're on now. I'm sorry, desire for singing the Lord's name we're on now, attachment to proclaiming his qualities, delight in the places where he dwells. These are just some examples, not the entirety, of indications, anubhavas. They're revealers, they're revelatory. They reveal that a sprout of bhava has been born, all right? That's what we're looking at. Just keeping our eye on the ball. And it's a lot of, stuff being thrown at you fast and furiously. Always pedagogy is always about repetition, going back, checking in, so forth. Okay. So we did that one. No, an illustration. Okay, this was 2 more to go, of the attachment to proclaiming his qualities is in the Krishna Karunamrita, the nectar of the ear, nectar through the ear of Krishna. Karunamrita is the nectar of the ear, meaning this, what is nectar of the ear? Stories of Krishna. They're nectar to the ear. The Krishna Karunamrita. And there's a wonderful kirtan singer. If you go online and type in Krishna Karunamrita, she's angelic. She was born a Krishna Bhakta in an ashram, actually. She was born as an ashram child and never left. A lot of the kids that were born in ashrams, as soon as they could, they ran off. They ran away. Some of them are coming back, but she remained deeply dedicated her life to chanting. So check out Karunamrita. Honestly, absolutely exquisite. Really, really wonderful. Just an angelic voice, and just deep devotion that comes through it. It's not the voice; it's really the bhav. So now you know what you've heard this word bhav. That's what it means. It can, bhav means here it means a loving state of mind. Then the word gets taken out of that context and it just gets applied to any state of mind. It can also mean that. But here the bhav is love of God. But sometimes people use the word just for any kind of state of mind. It's your bhav. What kind of a bhav is that? What's this bhav? His bhav is, so it gets, like yoga does, it gets appropriated and it loses its original context. Doesn't matter. Now, an illustration of the attachment to proclaiming his qualities in this text called the Krishna Karunamrita. The youthful form of that one who inspires love is sweeter than all other sweetness and more exciting than all other excitement. It is stealing my mind. Well, what shall I do? Attachment. This is love of God. We don't care about moksha. You don't even want to hear about moksha. Moksha is hell. You don't want a Svarupa Vastana. You want God. You want Krishna. Last one, I think. An illustration of the delight in the places in which he dwells is in the Vidyavali. When we go to Vrindavan, I'll be going next year. I have a year sabbatical. And I haven't been since COVID. So I'll be going there. Anybody wants to come to Vrindavan and is interested, and if you want to come when I'm there, so to keep give you a little bit of a guidance, take you to some holy places, or sort of help you out a little bit, because it's it's a real cultural, it's a very intense cultural experience. Vrindavan. It's not like going to Pune or Delhi or Agra or Jaipur. This is kind of medieval. It has its own ethos. It has its own everything. It's got its own mafia. It's got its own mafia. Vrindavan mafia, right? Because now, Delhi's become nouveau riche. It is only 2 hours away. So all the Delhi people coming down, and they want to, so they build their marble ashramas, and so real estate now is as expensive as Delhi. So mafia moves in. So yeah, and then you have a monkey mafia. Don't wear your spectacles in Vrindavan. The monkeys grab them off your head, and they sit on the ledge. They're very intelligent. I think someone should do an anthropological article on this, because they'll give it back to you, but you need to give them bananas and biscuits. How intelligent is that? It's barter. What else is that? It's barter. And they're in cahoots with the little boys. So little boys, when they see, they love it. They see this happy. It started about 20 years ago in one little alleyway in Vrindavan. I remember that little alleyway. Occasionally they would steal your glasses. Then it got more and more now, and it spread. So the monkeys all got to, they all communicated with each other. Like, well, this is a really good way of getting. It's not their fault. We've desecrated their landscape. Where are they going to get food? They don't get killed. Here, they kill them all. In the West, you kill them. They're a nuisance, kill them. Won't kill them there. So now there's probably more monkeys than there are people. Well, what are they going to eat? So then it spread. And of course, it's full of pilgrims. They don't know this. They don't know, And some of the nice Brajavasis say, take your specs off. But if the kids don't, they say, no, leave them on, because the monkeys steal it, and then the kids know how to get it back. So they'll say, okay, give me 100 rupees, 200, 500 rupees. If you're Western, 500 rupees. If you're, local, okay, 50 rupees. And then they get it back for you. So what was that Chitta Vritti all about? How do we, Mathura. So, because if you want to come to Vrindavan, I'll let you know when I'm there, and I won't know that until next year. But if you'd like to visit the holy places of Krishna, and you want to have someone there, I'd be happy to sort of be there and whatever, find a place for you to stay or whatever it is, help you out seeing some of the places. Right? When will I be fortunate enough to wander around the air of Mathura? Remember, Mathura means Vrindavan, and shed tears of joy while drinking the stream of nectar flowing from the mouth of the elders of Mathura, in words like this. So the real bhaktas there, they live there because every place reminds them of Krishna. Right here was the house of Nanda. Here the cart was destroyed. Here meaning some other place, Damodar was bound by cords. And so all the different places in Vrindavan have a little story. That's why it's why it's Vraj, Mandala, that Krishna did this here and he did that there, and what's the point of doing all that is to just immerse the mind more deeply in thinking of Krishna by visiting the holy places that trigger the stories. You go to the holy places and then you recount the stories that took place there, and these are just that's actually one of the 64 practices of Vedi. Okay, now more on love. Now so these are the indicators that we have some bhāva, that these sorts of things start to manifest, these sorts of behaviors start to manifest. These are the symptoms of a bhakta. Now he moves on to another topic, more on love. If a characteristic of love, such as a softening of the heart, appears to be observed within those who desire moksha, it's not really love. We're back to this theme again, my friends. Have you got it? Do you understand this by now, what Rupa's point of view? He's saying, there are those who are bhaktas, they say, oh yeah, we're bhaktas, but they want moksha. But they experience because they're doing bhakti yoga, but they're not seeking love. They're not seeking an eternal relationship with God. They want Svarupa Vastanam. They want an experience of their ultimate, their own sva, their own self. Whether that's the self of Advaita Vedanta or the Svarupa of Patanjali, is the same thing ultimately if you pick it apart. It's what's the common denominator? It's you, whether that you dissolves into infinity, number one, and number two, there's no place for God there. Ishvara in Advaita Vedanta dissolves at the end. There is no more Ishvara. Ishvara is only there for the path. But Vyavaharika, lower level, it's the conventional reality. Even in Patanjali, Ishvara can give you samadhi, but then what? No more Ishvara. Why not more? Because you're Svarupa Vastanam. You're absorbed in your own Rupa. Where's Ishvara then? Patanjali doesn't tell us. Where does he? He's also an eternal Purusha who is the guru of the ancients. He's omniscient. So he's still around, but just the bhakta hasn't sought him. He sought his Svarupa. So this is a huge theme here. It's a huge theme. So he's saying this. You can have a little bit of a bhava, which is sought after, even by 41. If a characteristic of love, such as softening of the heart, one of the indicators that we just described, the little list, if it appears to be observed within those who desire moksha, it's not really love. They may have some symptoms. Why? Because after all, they're fixing the mind on Bhagavan. So they may get some of those symptoms. Rupa says it's not really love. They never get prema, by the way, but they might have some bhava. Okay, this is a really important theme for the Bhagavata, to distinguish love of God from the bliss of the Atman, to distinguish the path that takes you to your Atman from the path that takes you to God and love of God. I hope that's been pounded in or repeated sufficiently for you. And here he goes again. How can love for the Lord, which is sought after even by the liberated ones who have abandoned all desires, they're already liberated. They've attained the Atman, but still they keep going. They want something more. They want love of God. How can that, which is a great secret that is not given quickly by Krishna, even to those who worship him, this love for the Lord, how can it find room in the hearts of those who, because of their desire for ordinary enjoyments or moksha, are not engaged in pure devotion? What's he saying? You can do bhakti, but you're doing it because for ordinary enjoyment, karma. You want God to give you stuff. That's the gimme. Or you want God to give you moksha. Rupa is saying, how can love of God manifest in a heart like that? The heart, why can't it manifest there? Because the heart's full of desire for ordinary enjoyment, or it's full of a desire for moksha. So if the heart is full of that, then there's not going to be any room for love of God. God's not going to give himself to someone who doesn't want God, someone that's approaching God for enjoyment, to receive, material facilities, or someone approaching God for moksha. They're not approaching God for love. So why would God give them love then? So that's what he's saying. How can love for the Lord find room in the hearts of those who are not engaged in pure devotion? Their devotion's not pure. Why isn't it pure? Because they want ordinary enjoyments, one category of people that approach God, or moksha. Gita talks about 4 types. So the inexperienced, if you're not a real bhakta, you'll be impressed by this. What are we talking about? Let's keep our eye on the ball. Talking about people that manifest bhava, some of the symptoms of bhava, but they're not interested in. They're interested in moksha or enjoyment. But because they're using bhakti to get that, they're using bhakti to get God to give them stuff, number one, or to get God to give them moksha, like Patanjali, number 2. They may show some signs of bhava. Okay, we clear? That's what we're talking about. They're showing some signs of bhava, but the inexperienced are amazed at seeing these signs of love in such persons. If you're, someone that doesn't know very much about bhakti, you'll be impressed with, oh, this person's showing these great signs of bhava. But the wise recognize this as only a semblance of love. It's not really love. Why isn't it love? Because they don't want God. They want moksha, or they want some material thing. So the wise recognize it, but the inexperienced are easily fooled. And they think, oh, such a great bhakta, always crying and rolling around and da. But if that person is seeking moksha, that's not, according to this tradition, the standards of real bhakti, according to Rupa, that's not love. Now he's going to go on about this semblance of love. It's not real love. And again, you've got 2 types. Now we're used to this, right? Everything gets schematized in Indian intellectual traditions. That's just a sign of sophisticated analysis. You schematize, and then things don't quite fit together. Then you have to create 2 separate categories. That's what intellectuality does. So this semblance of love, remember, it's not real. It's bhav. But why isn't it real? Because they want something else. It's their choice. They don't want God for God. They want God to give them something else. That's semblance for love. I mean, come on, we understand that. If someone comes up to you and offers you, friendship, but then you find out really they only wanted money from you, or really they only wanted knowledge from you. We've gone through this before. You're going to not think that's love. You might give them money, you might give them knowledge, but it's not love. So we understand that even in a mundane, in our own interactions. How many times have we been hurt by friends? We find out, they really only just wanted something from us. It happens to everybody all the time. So God is a being, and so the same applies. I'm not quite the same, but same sort of thing. So this is semblance of love. It's a semblance of friendship when someone comes up to you, they want something. So two types of semblances. One is called a reflection, the other is called a shadow. You give names to stuff. Right, so now he's going to talk about reflection of love. It's just, both of them are semblances. They're not real. Are we clear? They're, even though they may be accompanied by bhav, that's the point. Meaning some of the symptoms like sighing and crying and goosebumps. You may see that on someone that's doing bhakti, but it's not real bhakti. They never, first of all, they won't go further into prema. That's a given. But they might get some bhava. So Rūpa, he's a theologian. He has to, an intellectual has to account for everything. So he has to account for what about people who have bhava, but they're not real bhaktas from his point of view. So he has to analyze it and theorize it and schematize them and find a spot for them, find a place to situate them, to make it clear what real bhakti is. He's not trying to judge them. He's trying to take us to a place of pure bhakti. So if you're going to take someone to a place of pure bhakti, and there are other things that look like bhakti, it's your job as a theologian to point that out and say, no, that's not what we're talking about. It's nice. You might get some bhava, but that's not where we're taking you. We want you to go to a place of pure bhakti. So we have to be very clear about what is not real bhakti, but looks like it either as a reflection or a shadow. Their semblances. Okay, let's look at the reflection. The reflection of love, not real love, but maybe some bhav, grants the desired object without effort, is identical with some of the characteristics of love, and manifests a small portion of bliss in the form of ordinary enjoyments and moksha. So you do get some bhav, and you get some of the characteristics of love. So it's a reflection, like the reflection in a face looks like the face, has the same nose and ears and everything, but it's not the real face. It's just a reflection. It's not the actual face, but it has some of the qualities of the face. So like that, that's why he's calling it a reflection. And you get a small bit of bliss. No one's denying. You get blissed out. So kirtan, but in the end, what do you want? Oh, I want moksha. So Rupa's going to say, he's not criticizing it. He's just saying it's not real bhakti. It's his job. His job is to teach pure bhakti. So he has to make these distinctions. Right. Another reflection of the moon of Bhāva. Reflection now, semblance, which fills the sky of the hearts of Krishna's devotees because of their intimacy with him, appears in the heart of some rare individuals who are attached to ordinary enjoyments or moksha. So they may get some of that just by hanging out with, they like Krishna's devotees, they hang out with the devotees, the bhaktas, or they like Krishna's stories. So they experience some of the effects of that. But it may manifest some bhav in the hearts of some rare individuals, but who are still attached, not just attached, but their goal is ordinary enjoyments or moksha, but whose minds have been purified. They're attached to wanting material things or moksha, but their minds have been purified by imitating devotional practices such as chanting through some accidental association with real devotees. So even though their hearts are set on material things or moksha, some or other, they, hang out with devotees and they, like chanting, maybe, whatever it is, and they experience some bhav. So it's a reflection. That's all. There's no reason why they can't become real bhaktas. So they're disqualified. It's up to that. Your free will. It's up to them if they want to keep hanging on to ordinary enjoyments or moksha as a goal. It's one thing if our goal is Krishna, but we still, unfortunately, are afflicted by old desires. That's a different thing. That just means we need to keep going and be purified. But our goal is Krishna. It's very different. These are those whose goal is enjoyment or moksha. But they do bhakti and experience some bhav. That's all he's saying. Shadow. Second time of semblance. The shadow of love involves a little curiosity, about the Lord. It's fickle. What's the difference? This is more permanent, the reflection, because they're permanently attached to ordinary enjoyments and moksha. But this is fickle. You encounter the stories and, a little bit of curiosity, but it's fickle. It removes sorrow for a moment and somehow has a slight resemblance to love. You see people all the time. They get really into it for a little bit. They get into, and then they disappear, and then they go back to whatever it is they were doing before. But they've had their little bhav. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe next life, that bhav will reactivate and like a sprout. it's a first seed. It's good, better than nothing. But he does want to make a distinction between pure love and semblances, right? So it is sometimes seen even in ignorant people, meaning people who don't understand bhakti, or it doesn't mean ignorant as an insulting way. It means people who don't, they have no idea about the goal of bhakti. They're not doing it for the goal of bhakti. Even in ignorant people, due to an accidental association with the actions, times, places, and people dear to Hari. Like you see plenty of people living in Vrindavan, the holy places, for example, their accidental association with a place. So they have a little bhav, but they're not really interested. There's plenty of people living in Vrindavan, they're not interested in real bhakti. They're like anybody else. They want to sell they're sitting in the bazaar, in the market, trying to sell their wares, but they happen to be born there, so they get a little bhav, right? And so forth. But without good fortune, he's saying, but even they are fortunate that they have something. So look at this. Without good fortune, even the shadow of bhav does not arise, since its result is an ever-increasing state of happiness. All of this can grow, even if we start off with the wrong motive. So that's good fortune, which of course then we would understand as the grace of the bhaktas, actually. That our teachers who came and endured all that hardship to give us all an opportunity to encounter Bhagavan. That's what good fortune means. The grace of the teacher. They're just great souls. They just do it because they're great souls. And even a semblance of a bhav can suddenly proceed to the position of a bhav. You may start off as a semblance, right? Maybe you're seeking moksha, or you're seeking, God to do stuff for you, but it can move, it can develop to the position of a bhav if one obtains the grace of Hari's bhaktas. The bhaktas can guide us. Okay, they can point out, look, you're seeking moksha, but moksha is not, moksha. If you attain moksha, you're depriving yourself of something far more wonderful, a relationship with Bhagavan. So we can be guided by the grace of the Hari's devotees. So seek the company of devotees, my friends. It's, the 64, it was right at the beginning. That's how you start. The 64 principles of Vaidhi, right? It was Guru, and then the Bhaktas. So actually another big thing is that this tradition, it really cautions us not to offend real Bhaktas, because they're so dear to Hari. If we offend the Bhaktas, then Hari becomes displeased. And it's very stressed a lot in this tradition. I had slightly mixed feelings about the reasons I'm not going to share with you right now. But however, by offending these devotees, even the most excellent semblance of a bhava disappears, like the full moon in the sky. So if we could have some bhava, but then if we offend bhaktas, we through pride or foolishness, we lose the bhava. This is how we lose any bhava we might have cultivated or developed. Seen it happen so many times. People have some bhava and then they start to become arrogant and proud. That's what, maybe big guru, whatever it might be, big sannyasi. They start to get trapped by their ego. They start making offenses to maybe the best bhaktas are insignificant little, someone you don't even notice, just sitting under a tree doing japa or doing, some puja in a little temple somewhere. We don't know who the great real bhaktas are. Only Bhagavan knows that. What the heart's nothing to do with being a big guru, big sannyasi, big knowledge, big teacher, big Sanskrit, big lecturing. Don't be fooled by any of that, my friends. Nothing necessarily to do with bhakti. Only Bhagavan knows that the sign of bhakti is humility, complete and utter humility, pridelessness, along with all these other things we're reading. Right. But even if a bhava ceases to be a bhava by offending Krishna's devotees, it becomes a semblance of a bhava or is gradually reduced to an even lower state. We can lose it by offending Krishna's beloved devotees. Right, how do you reduce a bhava? A bhava is reduced to a semblance of a bhava or to the state of identification with the deity being worshipped. Rūpa and this tradition does not think favorably of Shivoham, that I become Shiva. They don't deny it as a possibility. But they don't think, because that becomes a semblance of a bhava, because when you become Shiva, where's the love now? You've merged into Shiva, you are Shiva. Love is a relationship between two. The Krishna has similar types of liberation where you can merge into the body of Krishna. It's called Sayujya. The great demons that were killed, some of the demons that were killed by Krishna, they merge into the body. Shishupala, they merge into the body of Krishna. They attain liberation. So they attain moksha, they're free of suffering, but this tradition considers that unfortunate. If you try to become Vishnu or Shiva, or you merge into the body of Vishnu, either way, you're actually depriving yourself of the relationship that comes between, love is between two. Love takes place between two. Bliss can be one. Bliss can be your own inner self. No, bliss is a state of oneness. You're in your one, your rupa, your own. That's bliss. Ananda, you want that? Then there's plenty of paths take you there. Prema, love is two. So even merging into Bhagavan, which is, understanding Bhagavan as a person, and merging into Bhagavan, or seeking to become Vishnu or Shiva, this tradition would say right here, let's read it. A bhava is reduced to a semblance of a bhava. It looks like love, but it isn't. Or to the state of identification with the deity being worshipped due to continual association with a person well established in the desire for moksha. How does this happen? Because you're too attached to the idea of moksha, 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 moksha. And you want to become Shiva, why moksha, 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 moksha? You want to merge into Vishnu, why moksha, moksha, moksha? No love there. So this is he has certain traditions in mind when he says this. The state of identification with the deity being worshipped. When you identify with that deity as you, if you identify with the deity as you, you've just eliminated the dynamics of love, which requires you and the not you. Two. For this reason, the state of identification with the deity, Shivoham, Vishnuham, I am Shiva, I am Vishnu, identification with the deity, which is associated with moksha. He's not denying you don't get moksha. We're clear about it. Difference between moksha and love, we've said it so many times. It doesn't matter, I'm going to say it a million times, like a downward dog, again and again and again and again and again. The state of identification with the deity, which is associated with mokta, is sometimes seen momentarily in new devotees during ecstatic activities such as dance. So he's saying here, sometimes this identification occurs in new devotees. Mature devotees don't want that. But in neophyte devotees, he seems to be saying, you may have this kind of a state. It may manifest momentarily during ecstatic activities such as dance. You actually begin to identify with the deity, right? He's saying it's momentary, first of all, and he's also saying it's new, it's immature, and it is immature from the point of view of Bhava, of Prema Bhakti, because you just there is no chance of Prema once you become the deity, but you may have Bhava. Okay, all of this is about different kinds of semblances of Bhavas, which Rupa is he wants to distinguish them all from pure love of God, which is God, to love God as God, not as me, I am God, or whatever, any other such construction, emotional or mental construction. When a bhav suddenly appears without the performance of spiritual practices, where's it coming from then? It should be assumed that this is a result of previous fruitful practices that have been concealed by some impediment. So you may have done practices in the past, then you did something. Let's say you offend the bhakta. You do something and then you get covered over by Maya, by avidya as a result. But all that practice doesn't go away. It gets concealed. Nothing goes away. Krishna says in the Gita, even a little bit of progress on this path saves you from the fear. You pick up where you left off. So it may be that you have to then do because you did some offense, you did something, you fall from the path, And so you have to go out and do some nonsense, or you get covered, or you get some karmic reaction, or you get some inauspicious period as a consequence, but then it comes back. And so he says, which suddenly appears, Bhav, right? So you've been off, you've done, you've left the path, you're running around samsara again. And all of a sudden it suddenly appears without the performance of spiritual practices. Well, how do you explain that? It should be assumed that this is a result of previous Vedic practices that have been concealed temporarily by some impediment. You had to take a karmic hit for something you did. You take the hit. Now, maybe a birth or two even, become a dog or something. You depending on what the karma was. Some impediment, but then it comes back and it appears spontaneous, but it isn't. You're picking up where you left off, as Krishna says, end of chapter 6. But that bhava, which causes supernatural astonishment, Aishvarya, grants all powers and is ever expanding. It's not static, ever expanding. Love of God is always growing, 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 growing. It's not that you attain the state like Svarupa, you attain it, that's it, bang. Whatever Ananda that is, that's it. That's going to be that for eternity. It doesn't change. It's changeless. That's the nature of jñāna marga. It's changeless. The path of knowledge and the path of Patanjali and yoga. This is ever expanding. So it can only be born by the grace of Krishna. If Bhava is born, we're almost at the end, my friends. We could finish the next chapter if you want. If Bhava is born in a person who appears to be without good qualities, he should not be criticized, since he has been completely there's a typo here. Since he has been completely in achieving the goal. I'm going to connect this with the Gita, where Krishna says, even the worst type of person, if he set his intention right, consider him a sadhu, and he'll quickly become rectified if he's surrendered to me. So even if Bhava appears someone, low, but really bad, don't judge anybody. You don't know who the bhaktas are. If Bhava appears, even if a person is, we might consider them lowly or sinful or whatever, according to the language of the text, not criticize if the Bhava is born, because whatever he's missed out here, what I've written down from the Sanskrit is, give me a second, I actually looked at this, because I wondered what the Sanskrit was, and it is, he has set his intention. It should be, he has been completely set in his attention. The Sanskrit is kritartha. He set his intention. So he may still have some bad qualities left. He may have a bad characteristic, but he set the intention. It's not going to just instantly, once you set your intention, it's not going to be instantaneous. So he may be dragging along, that person may be dragging along some bad, or how does he put it, lack of good qualities, but the intention is set, that's it. He's guaranteed success, shouldn't be criticized, right? And then the illustration, one who has undivided attention for Lord Hari shines forth, even when that one is very impure. And some of the greatest bhakti stories are from low caste, outcasts, to show the power of bhakti, that bhakti has nothing to do with caste. Surely the moon, whose surface is marred by the dark mark of the rabbit, is never completely overwhelmed by darkness. So, there's what we would say in English, right? What do we say in English? There's something equivalent, right? You don't criticize the small markings on the moon. Look at the beautiful luminosity of it. So there is some stark mark, but it's never overwhelmed by darkness. It's the moon. Finally, love is an abundant stream of bliss that incessantly pours forth passionate warmth. Even though it emits heat, it's cooler and sweeter than a billion moons. So it's paradoxically cool and heat intense. It's intense like heat, but it cools and soothes the heart from its beginningless, endless births of running around trying to fulfill desires which are never fulfillable. And it cools that intense, the desires in our hearts which always torment us, frustrate us, elude us. So on the one hand, it cools all that, and it's sweeter than a billion moons, but it's also very arduous. Should we finish? Do you want to finish? Or do you want to take a look? The Prema Bhakti is only 2 pages. We can finish, or it's really up to you. Or we can, Prema Bhakti is 1, 2, 3. Sorry, Prema Bhakti is 1, 2. It's only 2.5 pages. Do you want to keep going? Or do you want to stop for questions, my friends?
Let's go. Let's complete
Keep
it.
going.
In which case, then we wouldn't have an extra session. So we're all okay with that? Okay. All right. So we go on to Prema. Prema is just, it's nothing radically different. It's just a continuation of Bhava Bhakti. Now Prema. When the Bhava softens the heart completely and becomes very intense, and when it is marked by a high degree of minus, this is the defining feature. Krishna is mine. He's my Lord. He's my child. You lose, in some states of Prema, many states in the Raganuga Prema, you lose all sense of God's awe and majesty and godness and godhood and majestic aspect. He's my little Lala. He's my little Krishna. He's my beloved. He's my little child. Minus mamata, which of course, okay, it is called Prema, by the way. So this is the divining feat. It's Bhav. It's that same Bhav, just like Samadhi is the same jñāna, but more intense. It softens the heart completely. All the desires have gone. The heart just melts in splendor and love of God. Very intense, marked by a high degree of minus. I love that. Okay, remember this. Mamata. Krishna's mine. He's my little Lala. And then you make all your little pet names. Lalaji. The Vrindavan Bhakta, they don't call God, they call him Lala. Hey, Lala, he's my little Lala. Yes. That's Mamata, my friends. All right, get back to this. An illustration. The sense of minus for Vishnu and for nothing else is called Prema Bhakti by Bhishma, Prahlad, Uddhava, and Narada. These are great authorities. Bhishma, the great grandfather in the Mahabharata war. Prahlad, we had his story in the womb of his mother. Uddhava, Uddhava Gita at the end. Narada, we've had him several times already just today. Where devotion is called Prema by Bhishma and the others, the meaning is, when Bhishma talked about Prema, right? The attachment to Vishnu involves a sense of minus. Are we clear? This is what, when Bhava develops to the point where there's a loss of any sense of God's majesty and godhood, and it just becomes he's my Bhagavan, he's my little Lala. That's Prema. But it excludes a sense of, hey, hang on a minute, whoa, finish reading the contract. It excludes a sense of minus for anything else. If it's real minus for Vishnu, the sign of that is that you're not interested in anything else. Vairagya, no more aparigraha, no more minus for anything else. Let's not kid ourselves. Start playing games with ourselves, thinking we're on this high Prema just because we have if we have real mamata, the Bhagavan, that replaces any mamata for anything else, minus about anything else. And as we can expect, Prema Bhakti are two types, originating from a Bhava, just a development from Bhava, and originating from the extraordinary grace of Hari. We know we're going to have our examples. A Bhava that is raised to the highest state by performing outer and inner practices, right? Mental practices and external practices like, chanting and going to holy places. So that Bhava is called originating from a Bhava. Okay, so is that a title? Bhava that is raised to the highest state by performing, does it mean Prema? Well, let's see. An illustration for Prema Bhakti, it should be Prema, shouldn't it? Let me just look. I don't have time. An illustration of Prema Bhakti originating from a Bhava due to Vedi Bhakti is the 11th. Okay, so you do Vedi Bhakti, then you get Bhava, and that develops into Prema. Starts with Vedi Bhakti, slowly develops into Bhava, and which is affection, sort of with some of the indicators and the goosebumps and some of the symptoms. And then when it gets to a point of minus, God is mine, becomes Prema. Let's see the example he gives. He who acts according to the Vedi, scriptural injunctions, develops an intense love by singing the names of his beloved Hari, right? This is one of the practices of the 64, and his heart melts. Because of this, now these are the indicators. He laughs loudly, cries, shouts, sings, dances like a madman, thereby transgressing all worldly conventions. This is prema coming from Bhāva, from Vaidhi Bhakti. So you're doing the Vaidhi Bhakti, he's chanting, and then he gets Bhāva, and then he starts getting prema, and and then you have the indicators. I'm not sure this is a particularly good example of prema because it doesn't have anything about mamata, but let's not quibble. An illustration of prema bhakti originating from a bhava due to raga nuga bhakti, Padma. Right? So raga nuga, no rules and regulation. This one was, look, right, he who acts according to scriptural injunctions. What about those who are raga nuga? They're spontaneous. Remember, they would have done scriptural injunctions in past lives. No magic. The beautiful face Chandrakanti always remained celibate and never desired a human husband. I was reading a verse the other day about that woman is foolish who, instead of picking Bhagavan, there was a verse, I just read it. Instead of seeking you, Krishna, seeks a human husband made of flesh, and it lists flesh, blood, gristle, excrement, mucus, and so forth. Listen, she seeks a husband made of this instead of seeking you, Bhagavan. It was quite a graphic verse. All right, yeah, it was a Bhagavatam verse. So she was like that. She always remained celibate, never desired a human husband. Meditating on Sri Krishna's image, a deity alone, you can have all of this. All of this intense relationality you can have with the deity, my friends. You can have this. You attain these states from your deity by fully believing and inviting Krishna into your deity, and understanding that deity, Krishna can be present in your deity. You can have all of this. All of this can be undertaken, can be experienced with your deity. We're reading the story of Caitanya Charitamrita in our Rutgers course, story of Caitanya, and he's going around on pilgrimage, visiting some of the great temples of India, and recounting the stories associated with them. And some of them involve the deity getting down off the altar and doing, just actually, Ishwara actually in talking through the deity, walking, the deity actually getting down and walking off the altar as a witness, and various leelas like that, various stories like that. So don't underestimate the relationship that Hindus, but even just any Hindus, they go to the temple, I mean, they really believe there's a real sense that Bhagavan is in that deity. It's not a representation. It's divine presence, no different from a mantra. So there she's getting all this from her deity. Her body became adorned with goosebumps. We know that's an indicator. And so in this very life, she became affectionately attached to the intimate stories of Krishna. And we know which ones are the intimate stories. That would be Krishna and the gopis. Intimate in that sort of romantic, erotic sense. Now, how about originating from the grace of Hari? The extraordinary grace of Hari is the gift of his own company. Krishna gives us the gift of himself. So that's extraordinary grace. An illustration, 11th canto, although they never studied the scriptures, nor served the great sages, nor observed sacred vows, nor practiced asceticism, they still attain me because of their association with me. And who is he talking about? The gopis. Oh, this is the wives of the Brahmanas. It's a story in the 10th book, the wives of the Brahmanas. We don't need to worry about it, but the point is, they didn't, they were simple, they were Brahmin women, but they were simple, they didn't study, they weren't yogis or anything like that, but they attained by grace, essentially, the extraordinary grace of Hari, because it's following after, originating from the extraordinary grace of Hari. I know I hope we're not going too fast, but we'll keep going. Prema Bhakti born of graces, two kinds. One, that which is connected to knowledge of the Lord's majesty, so you know Krishna's God, and that which is exclusive, that's the residents of Vrindavan. They don't know Krishna's God because of Yoga Maya. They think he's mine, mamata. They think he's my child, my lover, and so forth. So, but you can either of those, even if you know God's majesty, you can still love God that way. But it's more reverential. There's a bit more distance. There's more respect and honor. There's more formality, but there'll still be love. But that's nothing like the residents of Raj who don't know. Krishna covers his majesty. This is the beautiful theology of Yoga Maya. covers his majesty precisely to allow intimacy and proximity, because majesty creates distance. Okay, affection that is very firm, right? Illustration of this, and surpasses all other emotions. Remember, if you have love of God, you're not going to be interested in anything else. That's the sign. Don't go around thinking I love God, and then and then 5 minutes later you're running around chasing desires. That's not real. That's not a sign of love of God. Sign of love of God is the loss of all other desires. Affection which is very firm, surpasses all other emotions, but is connected with the knowledge of the Lord's majesty. You know it's God. You're fully aware of God's majesty. That's called bhakti. The various states of liberation are achieved by means of it. They can be achieved in no other way. So it surpasses all other emotions. And, if you want these other kinds of liberation, like living in the same realm as Vishnu, having the same form as Vishnu, not being Vishnu, though, not these the Vaishnava liberations, you live in the same abode, divine abode, spiritual abodes made of pure consciousness in Brahman, the Saguna Brahman. You can attain those. And that's how you get to be a resident of Vaikuntha, through bhakti that is aware of Lord's majesty. You don't get to Vrindavan, though. You don't get Vraj bhakti that way. Vraj bhakti, you have to be unaware of God's majesty. That's even more intense. That's why the Vraj bhaktas are considered the highest of all bhaktas. No awareness of God's majesty. But if you, you might have a different bhav. Maybe your bhav is you appreciate majesty. You relish that. You still love that. You worship. You love to be in awe and reverence. But, so there's nothing wrong with that. You like to behold the wonders of God. So that's a kind of bhakti, and there's a kind of love. There's infinite flavors, my friends. Are we getting a sense of this? It's not a one size fits all. God has infinity of qualities, infinity of possibilities. So there's an infinity of ways of relating with God. And one can be in awe and reverence and majesty. It's connected with the knowledge of the Lord's majesty. What about exclusive Prema Bhakti? Devotion is uninterrupted desire that is drenched with Prema, supreme love of Hari, and free from all intentionality. Nothing, you don't want anything back. This alone conquers Vishnu. Unconditional, there's no conditions. So Prema connected with knowledge of the Lord's majesty is for those following the path of Vaidhi Bhakti. You follow Vaidhi, majesty, you get love, but your relationship with God would be something like Vaikuntha, with relationship with Vishnu, who's definitely God on high, formal, majestic. Maybe the queens of Dwarka. After Krishna leaves Vrindavan, he's very regal, he's very monarchical. He has his own, Dwarka. So that's bhakti there. And he marries princesses, but there's a regality to it and a formality that goes with regalness. So whereas exclusive Prema, no knowledge of majesty, is journey for those engaged in Raga Nuga. What's Raga Nuga? Remember, modeled on the Ragatmikas, the residents of Vraj, no knowledge of God's majesty, no awareness of God's power and majesty. Are we all doing all right up there? We're almost done. We're almost done. Next time we meet, we'll be doing Vedanta Sutras. Boring, falling asleep. Do it. If you have an insomnia problem, let's read Vedanta Sutra. You'll be out in 10 minutes. So let's enjoy our last page together, my friends. Okay. I'm not doing Vedanta Sutra. Forget about it. I'm done with all that. I'm going to be just Leela from now on. Actually, we're teaching a seminar on Vedanta Sutra next semester. After having said that, all right. So. Right now, so where are we? Prema. So Vaidhi Bhakti is formal. If there's awareness of majesty, then that's a particular type of bhakti, which suits, there's freedom. You get to choose. There are those that they want. That's what they want. They want to just be absorbed in the wonders of God's majesty, and that's their bliss. And then the exclusive Prema is the Raganugas. Remember. They're following the Ragatmikas of the residents of Raj. They don't want nothing to do with God's majesty. Yashoda is going to scold Krishna. And sometimes she chases him with a stick. Whereas, and the text loves to say, he whom the great minds of the yogis cannot even reach with lifetimes of tapas, he allows himself to be chased by his mother, due to the bonds of her love. So that's Yogamaya. When majesty is concealed, it's Yogamaya that conceals it. And that's a topic for another workshop, Yogamaya. So the first stage of love for practitioners. Well, how does it, what's the process? How does it develop? Faith. It starts up with faith. There has to be some faith to, to go to a holy place, to pick up a holy book, to, talk to a bhakta, visit a temple. I mean, there has to be some little trigger. So some faith. Then in order, association with the saints. This is very, very important at the beginning. Remember the 64 processes? It was right at the beginning. Guru was 1, 2, 3, and then I think the sadhus was number 4 or 3. Starts with associating with those that have bhakti, because it rubs off. It's like you hang out with criminals, you become a criminal. You hang out with, whatever it is you hang out with, it's common psychology, right? You don't need to be that's basic 101 psychology. So if you hang out with saints, you become their enthusiasm and their faith and their devotion. And that's what happened to me when I went to Vrindavan in 1979. I thought, I was so utterly taken by the bhaktas. They had an intensity of surrender that's what I hitchhiked to India to find. And they had it. That's what I wanted. I didn't understand the theology at all. I thought it was a bit weird, really. But so sadhu sangha is the beginning. Bit of faith, but then from the faith come acts of worship, bhajana kriya. You start doing your pujas, your japa, some of the 64. But then it's still yoga, the cessation of worthless activity. You've got to still follow yamas and niyamas and all of that. It's not like a free pass. You're still a yogi, still bhakti yoga. So anartha nivritti. Then loyal nishta, I wouldn't say loyalty, I'd say fixed. Nishta means to be fixed. I mean, loyal maybe brings in, it's okay, it's not wrong, but nishta usually means you become fixed. Then you start to become fixed. Nothing can shake you from the path anymore. Then desire, and then attachment. So you desire it, and then that desire develops just as it does for material things. You desire it, and then you become attached. You desire something, the more you think about it, the more attached you are to attaining it. It's the same with God. Then bhava. Right now you start having some of the symptoms, and then finally prema, where the sense of, remember what is prema? A sense of minus, mamata. The behavior of that fortunate one in whose heart prema has newly manifest is difficult to fathom, even by those well-versed in scripture. So if you see someone who actually has this prema, they don't act in any kind of socially, sometimes, recognizable ways, even by those well-versed in scripture. We're just reading about the life of Caitanya. And actually, there was a great Vedantin, great moksha, seeking moksha, Brahman, Advaita Vedantin. And he actually was able to recognize the symptoms of Caitanya, but he didn't fully understand. He knew there's something special here, but then he tried to preach to Caitanya, you're a sannyasi, you're young, you should be studying Vedanta, come and study with me, all of this, rolling around ecstasy. He was touched a little bit, but he said, but ultimately we've got to get beyond that. These are just emotional states that just, we got to get to this state beyond emotionality. We're going to take you to this impersonal Brahman, to the Nirguna Brahman. So he preaches to Caitanya for 7 days. Caitanya doesn't say a word, listens to this Advaita Vedanta going on about Brahman. And eventually then Sarvabhauma says, well, you haven't said anything for 7 days. And then Caitanya then says, well, I'm not recognizing the teachings of your version of Vedanta. I'm not recognizing anything. I'm not recognizing the truths of the Upanishads in your version of the Vedanta. So this is, I guess, you could say that's a sectarian exchange. But anyway, so then he gives his Vaishnava interpretation of the Vedanta, and Sarvabhauma becomes a great bhakta. But I guess the reason I brought this up in the first place, we just had that class yesterday. That's probably one reason. But the other reason being that he was very well versed in the scripture, and it's difficult to fathom. He knew something was going on. He didn't understand what, because he was an Advaitin. For him, any state of emotionality is openly Maya. Maybe some Maya, maybe some takes you a little bit closer to Brahman, but in the end, you got to go beyond all states of mind, all emotionality. And then then everything then dissolves, the world dissolves, you dissolve, your sense of individualness dissolves, and sarvamidam kalu Brahman, everything dissolves, and then shining, radiant, infinite Brahman manifests. You're no longer you. You simply now have this sort of cosmic, infinite, eternal, blissful experience of Brahman. So that's where he was coming from. So while he was impressed by the ecstatic symptoms, it difficult to fathom. He didn't know what was going on. And ultimately for him, they were lower than his understanding of Vedanta. All right, illustration. Oh, great goddess, one who is mad for Hari and is drenched with the highest joy. He knows nothing of his own happiness of sorrow. This is how you know, even just regular yoga, you're no longer affected. I mean, this is basic Gita teaching, right in the beginning of chapter 2. Sukha dukkha anuda, you're not happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, sad, happy, sad, trapped in your body, mind. Things go well for body, mind, happy, happy, happy. Have a bad day, sad, sad, sad. So someone who is mad for Hari, he knows nothing, no connection with his own happiness or sorrow. His mind is somewhere else, absorbed in Hari. This is Prema. These are signs of Prema. Okay, so look, we've only got 4 more verses and we're almost on time. I don't know if Lakshmi's here. We'll see in a minute. Tenderness and the other exalted emotions are not analyzed and discussed here. So there's all other symptoms of love he's going to discuss. This is a big, huge, fat book, my friends. This is a how many 800-page book, and we've only done 119 pages. It's 666 pages, and we finished the first quadrant, and it's page 121. So tenderness and the other exalted emotions are not analyzed and discussed here, since they're only variations of Prema and extremely rare, and some of them he discusses later on. Even though the sweetness of the philosophy of devotion is very mysterious, love of God is mysterious, it's trans-rational is the word I like to use, cannot be understood even by great scholars and Vedantins. He just said that in the previous verse, right? Even by the very learned, right? Where is it? Is difficult to fathom even by those well-versed in scripture. So that, they should, even then it's hard. Even though the sweetness of the philosophy of devotion is very mysterious, it has been fully explained. Now, this is his elder brother, Sanatana Gosvāmī, and he wrote this beautiful Bhagavatāmṛta. By the way, some of these texts are available for free. The whole Bhagavatam, if you want to read the whole thing, just go to vedabase.com, Vedabase, V-E-D-A, Veda, and base, like base, B-A-S-E. And then there's all books there, including the story of Caitanya, and then the whole Bhagavatam, you can just click on the various links and read it all if you like reading online. I prefer having a hard copy, but it's all free. So I urge you to explore this literature, my friends. It's vast. So here he's making a reference. He's saying, well, a lot of this is been explained by my elder brother. He's, who he sometimes calls his guru, Sanatana. And here's the book, the Bhagavatāmṛta. You can get a lot. All of these are now becoming translated into English. They're all available on Amazon. He's finished. Now he wraps up his conclusion. May the eternal Lord, who expands the Bhāva of Ram by assuming the beautiful form of Gopal, obviously Rama and Gopal are one. I don't know why he decided to mention Raghunath Ram here, but he does. That's fine. He's not sectarian. That's all the same being ultimately. But I don't know why he suddenly brings in Bhāva Raghunath, but that's not, I can't read his mind. But may the eternal Lord who expands the Bhāva Raghunath, which is Ram, another name for Ram, by assuming the beautiful form of Gopal, may he be pleased with the first division, right, the first quadrant of the Bhaktirasāmṛtasindhu, the ocean of the essence of devotional rasa. Bhakti, devotional, rasa. He's got essence, that it's actually amrita, nectar, and the sindhu. And there's another way of translating that verse. Scholars love to, show their erudition and their skill by writing something that can be read in 2 different ways, but exactly the same words, like not a double entendre, but just a sort of, if you read it, you can construe 2 sets of meanings. So the other set is, may Sanatana Gosvāmī, that's why he has Raghunath, because Raghunath is also a Gosvāmī. one of the 6 Goswamis. Rūpa Gosvāmi and Sanatana Gosvāmi are 2, there's 6 of them, principal disciples of Chaitanya. So that's why he's mentioned Raghunath here, because he wants to have this play on words, which allows a second reading, exactly the same Sanskrit. May Sanatana Gosvāmi, who enhances the Bhāva of Raghunath Das Gosvāmi, while enlightening Gopala Bhatta Gosvāmi and Rūpa Gosvāmi. So he wants to mention all of the Goswamis. And you can get that same meaning from the 2 alternative meaning from the very same Sanskrit lines. I don't know if that made any sense to you. My friends, there we have it. We just navigated the eastern quadrant of the ocean. And thank you. Because it just, we're studying together. I'm not a teacher. I've decided to give up using that term teacher. It's so presumptuous, really. Think about it. Isn't it presumptuous to think you're students, my friends? It's just another, you start thinking you're a professor or you're a teacher. What kind of language is that? We're all students, and we created this opportunity to study, to share the Bhakti Shastra together. So I thank you. And we haven't had any time for questions. I know that. I don't know what to do about that, but we forged on and we finished. We didn't read the 8 verses of Sri Chaitanya, but we'll save them for another workshop because Lakshmi is here and I want to honor his time. And we just read about not offending the devotees, right, Lakshmi? We want to offend Lakshmi, we become frogs in our neck. Remember, we have to spend like 2 lives as frogs, but then it comes back. Where's Lakshmi?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are, Lakshmi. So thank you so much, Lakshmi ji. We actually finished. This is going to be our last session. We kind of, because Prema Bhakti is such a short chapter, only like 2 pages.
Yeah. Hey, I had another idea about 21 too, about him mentioning Raghunath.
Oh yeah.
Expanding the Bhava. Because of that instance of the sages of Dandakaranya.
Yeah.
Where they wanted to reciprocate with the Lord in the conjugal.
Right.
So Krishna Raghunath, Ram becomes Krishna to fulfill their desires. So he could expand beyond the Swakiya into Parakiya. So that's another idea.
Lakshmi, thank you so much. I get so many nice comments. Emails just appreciating your kirtan. So thank you for joining us yet again.
Well, thank you.
And welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so much for the invitation to be with so many wonderful people. So this particular chant that I'm going to do is, Srila Prabhupada once said that it's the entirety of Goloka Vrindavan in 4 lines. The bhav of Golok Vrindavan and the mood and the various places there. So I thought it would be a very nice chant to do. It's called Jaya Radha Madhava. And it's very, very sweet melody. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giri Bodhadhari Gopi Janna Vallabha Giri Bodhadhari Jashodanandana Prajajanna Ranjana Jashodanandana Prajajanna Ranjana Jamuna Tira Jamuna tira Bonachari Radha Madhava Gunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribodad Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribodad Hari Jashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jashodanandana Brajajanarandana Jamunatira Bonachari Jamunatira Bonachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribodad Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribodad Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribodad Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribodad Hari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribodad Hari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribodad Hari Jashodanandana Brajajannaranjana Jashodanandana Brajajannaranjana Jamunatira Bonachari Jamunatira Bonachari Jamunatira Bonachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribodad Hari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhan Hari Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Bonachari Jamunatira Bonachari Jamunatira Bonachari Jayarada Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayarada Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jayarada Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Gopi Jana Ballabha Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Ballabha Girivardhari Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jayodata Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava.
Jai Sri Radha Madhava.
Jai.
Thank you, Lakshmi Ji, Prabhu. Koti Dandavat. And yeah, a wonderful place to end with that wonderful bhajan in the heart, Radha Madhava, reflecting that beautiful painting behind you, which I can't take my eyes off. It's so beautiful.
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you continue your study of the Bhakti Shastras. You can download, like I said, check out vedabase.com. Lots of free stuff up there. Life of Chaitanya, another amazing text. The whole Bhagavata Purana. We will maybe do a workshop in the fall if we're interested in the Bhagavata. But I hope this has been, it's theology. It's the theologian. So Rūpa, there are theologians in every tradition. Their dharma is to really systematize things. I know it's very systematic and that doesn't suit everybody, but traditions, all traditions have their great theologians that sort of, for those intellectually inclined, apply intellectual rigor to schematizing the theology of the tradition. That's Rūpa, what Rūpa has done. So it's it's a scholastic text, and not sort of popular bhakti. There's it's you've engaged something that is really well done for hanging in there and for appreciating the bhakti, appreciating this systematization of bhakti. So I hope it piqued your interest. I hope you'll put some of those 64 practices into practice. Rupa's not just writing this for our intellects, but he's hoping to inspire us to pick up the practices of bhakti and see where they lead us. So I encourage you all to consider that. And thanks again to Lakshmi Prabhu, my old friend, and hopefully we'll see you again in the fall. If we put another workshop together, we'll see how we feel then. So good night to everybody.
Thank you, Acharya Ji.
Jai Shri Radhe.
Jai Shri Radhe. Radhe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bless. Thank you.